Shalom, I'm coming to you today to address some of the issues with the war in Israel, and I hope this makes sense because most of this was written in a frenzy as I was watching the world break out into insanity before my very eyes. The theme of this video is when compassion justifies injustice. I'll explain why in a bit, but for now I want to throw out some questions that many people are asking all over the world. Questions like, should Christians support the Israel war? Is Israel going overboard? Are they committing genocide? Shouldn't we stand up for innocent Palestinians in Gaza? And why do so many people, including Christians, support Hamas and are against Israel? Well, here are some of the things that have happened recently to give you some context for what I'm talking about. Recently in Russia, a plane landed from Tel Aviv filled with Israelis trying to escape the terrors of what is going on in Israel right now. Hundreds, if not thousands, of anti-Israel protesters broke through airport security and rushed out onto the tarmac so that they could accost the Jews as they got off the plane. All over the world, there are pro-Hamas, anti-Israel protesters chanting, "Free Palestine," or "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." In a public rally of more than 100,000 people, the president of Turkey called for the annihilation of Israel. He's claiming that the terror organization known as Hamas is not a terror organization at all, but a liberation group of people fighting for its land and for its people. He all but calls on war with Israel, calling them genocidal. Also, the Queen of Jordan gave a public speech downplaying the atrocities of Hamas on October 7th, completely ignoring their brutality and instead calling Israel the aggressor against the, quote, innocent Palestinians. Jews are not safe anywhere. All across the United States, students on university campuses have staged walkouts to protest Israel and show solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza. They're demanding that the universities, quote, fully divest from weapons corporations which arm Israel's occupation and genocide in Gaza. For example, the University of Virginia recently had a student walkout protesting the school's connection to weapons manufacturing companies that currently provide arms to Israeli defense, including Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics, among others. According to the school newspaper, the walkout also included two additional demands: an end to the siege and U.S. funding for Israel, as well as the university's explicit acknowledgement of Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip as genocide. One of the sad parts about this is that these young people are at a university where they are supposed to be getting an education. And not one of them has bothered to visit the library to check out a dictionary and read the definition of the word genocide. So let's take a look at that now. Genocide, the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. Is this what Israel's doing? Absolutely not. They're weeding out terrorists who are hiding among civilians that Israel has warned by multiple methods to move out of the area that they're engaging. But now we need to take a look at Hamas to see if they have any claims to this crime of genocide. First, let's take a look at the Hamas charter. It says, quote, Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. Next, let's take a look at their actions. They don't engage the Israeli military in combat or attack military installations. They shoot rockets indiscriminately in an attempt to target civilian neighborhoods, synagogues, schools, playgrounds. They randomly stab people on the streets. They shoot people as they sit in their cars. They kidnapped and killed 3 innocent Israeli teenagers in 2014 simply because they were Jews. Now, on October 7th, 2023, more than 1,500 Hamas terrorists infiltrated the Israeli border from Gaza and launched a surprise attack on Israeli civilians. While Hamas, the political leaders, claimed that the attack was a military operation aimed at disabling Israeli troops, it's become quite apparent that they came for the express purpose of slaughtering innocent Israelis and inflicting as much psychological damage on the collective Israeli psyche as possible. We know for a fact that alongside Israeli soldiers, civilian men, women, children, and infants were tortured, molested, shot, mutilated, and burned alive. And why? Because they were Jews. The ultimate goal of Hamas is to exterminate the Jews. And if that's not the definition of genocide, I don't know what is. You must be looking at a different dictionary. So, why is all of this happening all over the world, and why is it happening now? Why do other countries in the Middle East, as well as other countries such as Russia, support Hamas, an organization known for their terror and brutality? Unfortunately, the answer is simple. They hate Jews and can't stand to see them prosper. Jews have been run out of almost every country in the world and blamed for every problem you can imagine. If things are going bad, the Jews are always the easiest target. But what about the Western world, especially the university students who normally root for the underdog? Think about it. From the day of the massacre, there were activists the world over who rejoiced in the atrocities committed against Israel, waving flags and dancing in the streets. Let it sink in. There were children mutilated and women molested, and they want to throw a party? It sounds just like the Hamas terrorists who use the phones of their victims to call their families and tell them what they did so they can celebrate. It's disgusting. It's sick. It's debased. It's more immoral. It's a perversion of all that it means to be human. But this is easily explained as well. And this response is so ingrained into the human psyche that God had to give a commandment in the Torah to warn us of how it could distort our perspective and pervert justice. What do I mean? Let me explain. The Torah speaks to this situation when it says, "You shall not spread a false report. You shall not join hands with the wicked man to be a malicious witness. You shall not fall in with the many to do evil, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit siding with the many, so as to pervert justice, nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit." This is Exodus 23, verses 1 through 3. Well, in this passage, when it talks about the poor man, it doesn't use the normal word to mean poor, meaning having no money. It uses the Hebrew word dal. It can mean poor, but it has another meaning. It means weak or lowly, someone in a bad position, okay? So how does this help us understand why the world is condemning Israel and cheering on the Palestinians who were harboring, defending, and cheering the terrorists? Because everyone loves to root for the underdog. We want to feel like we're defending the weak against the powerful, the oppressed against the oppressor, the defenseless against the mighty army, and other things like that. But in this case, we have been played. It's one of the best PR con jobs the world has ever seen. Fact: Palestinian refugees receive more money than nearly any other group in the world. They receive money from the United States, from the European Union, from the UN, and from other Arab countries. Yet what do they have to show for it? Rather than using the money to improve the lives of Palestinians by creating infrastructure, educational facilities, and the production of food resources, it's gone to fund terrorism and line the pocket of Arab elites, Hamas elites, many of whom are billionaires. Yes, with a B. Here's the net worth of the top Hamas leaders. Abu Marzouk is worth $3 billion. Khaled Mashal, $4 billion. Ismail Haniyeh, $4 billion. And what are they doing to help the Palestinians? They are profiting off of their poverty. Nearly all the money that comes into Gaza via humanitarian relief is spent on terrorism. They've sunk millions and millions of dollars into weapons to do one thing: kill Jews. They have literally spent billions of dollars over the course of more than a decade to build a city of terror networks beneath Gaza to do one thing: kill Jews. They've ripped up the water pipes that were provided by the EU and installed by Israel so that Gaza could have clean water. But now they take those pipes to do one thing: build rockets and kill Jews. What are the Hamas supporting Palestinians in Gaza doing right now? They're celebrating every single Jewish death. They're trying to figure out how to kill more Jews and then spin the story to gain sympathy in the media. What are the Israelis doing right now? They're working to ensure the safety of their people by attacking strategic military targets within Hamas's terrorist labyrinth underneath Gaza. They're dropping leaflets over the areas they intend to strike to warn civilians and tell them to get out of harm's way. They are praying. They are studying Torah. They're providing humanitarian aid for their people. Even the non-kosher restaurants are koshering their kitchens so that they can feed religious Jews. But the world continues to spin the story on its head. Recently, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United States, spoke to the UN Council and basically blamed Israel for the Hamas attack, saying that the event, quote, did not take place in a vacuum, and that the reason for the attack was Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory. Think about it. The United Nations was established after World War II in an attempt to maintain international peace and security and to achieve cooperation among nations on economic, social, and humanitarian problems. This is the leader of the international organization that was supposedly funded in order to protect the world from these exact types of problems. But yet he's blaming Israel and saying that they are at fault for Hamas breaking into Israel and slaughtering their civilians. We're definitely living in a time when good is called evil and evil is called good. So let's go back to this passage I quoted from the Torah in Exodus 23. How does that relate? Well, God knows that we as humans, created in His image, have a built-in sense of justice and compassion. And knowing this, He warns us that even those godly traits can get us into trouble if they're out of balance. Therefore, the Torah tells us that we are to pursue justice rather than simply siding with our emotions, simply siding with the weak. Why? Because a weak or poor person doesn't automatically mean that they are innocent. There have been many weak, poor, underprivileged people who have committed great crimes out of desperation. But sometimes, as is the case with Hamas and the Palestinian issue in Gaza, they're using their seeming disadvantage as misdirection. As I heard one news reporter say, Hamas is weaponizing Israel's morality against them. Yes, they are. And indeed, they are doing that to the entire world. They're playing on our sense of pity and empathy, as well as our detest for injustice, by spinning the narrative in their favor. And if we don't get the truth out, it will soon be the day that the entire world turns on Israel. We are living at the pinnacle of the era of misinformation. Even more powerful than the rockets, the guns, and the IDEs, the campaign of deceit that Hamas has launched in this war is unprecedented. Case in point, there was an explosion at a hospital in Gaza. Immediately, the BBC, CNN, and others run the headline, "The IDF bombs hospital," claiming that Israel has killed more than 500 civilians by bombing a hospital in Gaza. Where did they get their story from? Hamas. After all, aren't they the most credible news source in the Middle East? The IDF immediately did a full investigation to make sure it wasn't their fault. Yeah, they actually didn't immediately deny it like Hamas. They actually said, we need to check it out in case we may have accidentally caused this. They took responsibility for what could have been their own actions. But by the time the IDF completed their investigation, the Lashon Hara, the evil speech that the reporters had spread to millions of people across the world had already ignited the powder keg of anti-Semitism that was brewing. Protests and acts of violence erupted around the world against Jews worldwide. Even after Israel proved that it was a rocket launch gone bad from terrorists within Gaza, it was too late. The damage was already done, and people across the world are still suffering because these news agencies never retracted their stories, or they brushed it off as something that they may have accidentally done wrong. They didn't own up to their negligence that caused the loss of human lives. Hamas has no concern for Palestinian civilians. They knew their attacks on Israel would provoke Israeli strikes on Gaza, yet they built their terror network beneath schools, hospitals, churches, and anywhere else that they could get the world screaming at Israel if they did anything to try and dismantle it. They knew Israel would retaliate, but they didn't supply the Palestinians in Gaza with food or water to last through the attacks. Only rockets. While Gaza is screaming for food and water, thousands of rockets continued to be fired from amidst the rubble. No food, no water, no fuel, but a surplus of rockets. What does that tell you about Hamas's concern for the people they supposedly are fighting for? This is the organization that the world is cheering because we've allowed our sense of injustice to believe a lie. If you want to do your part in changing the tide that's raging against God's chosen people, then share this video. Post it to every social media outlet that you use. Let the truth break through the darkness of the lies. We have to win the information war by spreading truth, debunking misinformation wherever and whenever we are able. May God bless you as you stand on the front lines of the information war. Blessings from Emet HaTorah.